Good afternoon. Many of you may have just hopped on over from the IATP webinar that Josh Liebman and Attraction Pros was doing. So a lot of good information over there. And we'll talk about some of that and maybe unpack it and debrief on some of that as we get together here this afternoon. So last week we had a very high level overview and strategic overview around cleaning and what it means to clean in our environment and the difference between cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting. And right after that, I thought that we would turn this into a much more tactical one on cleaning. What exactly do you clean? How do you clean? Specifically, what do you clean? But as I kind of got through the week last week and into yesterday, and states starting to get into different stages of opening and phases, I really felt like it would be helpful, especially after coming off of such a great talk from Josh, Attraction Pros, to really create a kind of a moderated forum where we can ask questions. Maybe we know there are some states where some parks have opened. We did invite a couple of those park owners on, so I'm not sure if they were able to make it last minute. But we've got some pretty exciting times ahead, and so really that's really where I want to go with this. So to kind of share some stories of this last week, some conversations I've had. Just be thinking of what your questions are. Go ahead and use the chat, while I'm talking, and kind of let me know, let the team know what your questions are, and go ahead and send it to everyone, because what we found going back to our very first town hall, but there's people in this room that are more experts than myself or FunSpot or our team are, because they have different experiences, and that's the goal of our town hall, is to really bring together that community and share those experiences with one another, and create some meaningful connections. So with that, last Tuesday, I decided that it was time to get out of 5 weeks of being home here in Anderson, South Carolina, and myself and Matt Hubbard, my sales partner at FunSpot, loaded up the car and pointed west to visit parks. And so we stopped in Birmingham, Alabama, and talked with some customers who were getting ready to, they've just cleared dirt and they're going to build an entertainment center that includes some different products that we sell, and got to talk to them about what they're thinking about all this, and they're moving forward. They've got a large budget, they've got the funds available, and they're moving forward. We stopped in Gadsden, Alabama, and talked with a customer who's building a bowling alley right now and adding some other attractions into that bowling alley, and she's moving forward. She's getting ready and doing everything she can to get open. We got to Monroe, Louisiana, talked to a park owner, and visited his couple of parks, and he was encouraged and just ready to open. He felt like his customers were ready to come back. Went down to Lafayette, saw another park, went to Houma, Louisiana, went to Mississippi, and again saw some independent park owners who were just great people, kind of hurt by being closed for 5 or 6 weeks, but excited to open. They've been in contact with their customers. They kind of took some of the marketing advice we gave a couple of weeks ago and stayed in touch. And if there's anything that I could recommend that you do, if you're not doing it right now, is that you're regularly communicating with your customers via social media and even via email. Those touch points, I think, will pay really large dividends as you get into your reopening efforts and actually do reopen. But all that to say is, just hearing face to face. I mean, it's one thing to sit across the screen from each of you guys and talk to you, and I do a lot of that, as you do with your customers and your staff. But Matt and I felt like we wanted to sit across the table, 6 feet, of course, and just talk. And by doing so, it just really kind of recreated that human connection and the connection that we have and the common experiences that we have. So I just want to say to you, having visited now 6 different park owners in the last 3 or 4 days, that there is encouragement, there is some excitement about getting open, but there are a lot of questions, and that's what I'd like to do, is to just kind of maybe flesh out some of those questions together, and see how we can get ready to open. If there's anybody who has opened, if you would maybe go ahead and put in the chat that, yeah, we're opening, or we're planning on opening here in the, in the next 3 or 4 days, depending on your state. So go ahead and let us know that. And we'd love to hear from you, especially about what you're thinking, or if you know you're going to open here on the next Monday coming up, based on some state orders, what you're doing in these last 3 or 4 days running up to that time frame. I did invite Bill Carlson. Bill, if you're there, I know you work with Headrush Technologies and create the True Blue that anyone who has climbing in their park would know about, that auto belay. I know some climbing centers have opened. So Bill, if you had a chance, would love to hear what you've heard and feedback you've heard from the climbing industry, which really parallels the adventure park and trampoline industry.
Hey Scott, this is Bill with Headrush. It's a lot of climbing gyms have not opened yet. We actually mapped it out in the U.S. There's some states in the central Midwest that are open, and then there's kind of a stage staggered opening that we expect to happen over the next month or two. But looking from state to state, there's not a really kind of solid approach to how gyms are opening up. But at Headrush, we deal with a lot of different markets. We work with people in the trampoline market, within the FEC market, within the commercial climbing gym market, the ropes course market. And I think the one thing that we see in all of them is, and there's a desire for, is just making sure that customers feel confident when they come in. And that means everything from policies regarding masks and checking temperatures, which are preventative, to following the CDC guidelines and making sure people are washing their hands, not coming in sick, making sure you have plenty of hand washing stations situated around your facility, and then clean where you can, the high touch points. So the front desk, making sure you have a strategy for how you check people in and out, so they're not violating the social distancing rules that are in a lot of states and communities, to making sure your equipment is as clean as possible. And I think the tough part with that is, different manufacturers are going to have different recommendations. Right at the start of this, Headrush did a ton of research with regards to our product and what's the best way to clean our product. And the first thing we noticed with our product, with the True Blue, is people only interact with the first maybe 3 or 4 feet of the product. And then we looked at what's going to mitigate the risks from the virus, and at the same time not damage our product. Many textiles are damaged by a lot of the cleaning equipment and cleaning chemicals out there. So we did the research and quickly found that just a 70% solution of isopropyl alcohol is going to take care of any of the virus material on that first 3 to 4 feet of webbing. It's going to clean the carabiner, and it resolves that issue. But I think the most important part is make sure you're taking the steps you can, and make sure you're building confidence in your customers, so that they know that when they come in, it's a clean space, they feel like it's a safe space, and that we truly are doing everything we can to make it that way.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bill. Attraction Pros did a survey, and we'll put a link to it on our Townhall website afterwards. And then it was really kind of the data from that was backed up by a separate survey in the UK, asking customers how likely they would be to visit different types of venues once they opened in the 90 days subsequent to opening. And in both surveys, both domestically and in the UK, with statistically significant numbers, trampoline parks were rated as the least likely to go to in the 90 days leading after an opening. And So that says to me there's a certain perception that our parks have in the way that customers interact with the equipment and each other, and how clean those places are. And so, really cleaning to me is, and that visible cleaning, and there's more that we can go into on that, is going to be super important in the products we use, the processes we use, and then. Joshua on this call said something that really resonated with me, because you made a statement, Bill, about social distancing, and he's changed to using the term physical distancing, which I think is an important distinction. We can be physically distant, 6 feet apart, but still social. We don't have to be socially distant, and I think so I'm going to pick up on that and start using physical distance when it pertains to what we do.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate that, and I think I'll start doing the same. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
So there's a couple of different theories that as I've talked to different park owners around how they're going to accomplish cleaning that I've come up with, and I would love to get some feedback from the group here. We've got a good representation of owners and suppliers and operators. So one of them is kind of the movie theater style of thinking around, hey, we'll let a group of X, whatever capacity is allowed in from 10 a.m. till 11:30, and then we'll close the attractions from 11:30 to 12 while we clean them, while we let in the next group and process them through their tickets and attractions, or tickets and wristbands and waivers, and then let them go from 12 to 1:30. And then, certainly that is a limiting aspect of your capacity, but it allows for that. You have one group, instead of having every 15 or 30 minutes new people entering into the mix, and you can clean. So that's one way. A second way is kind of operating under a reduced capacity, but under the normal, regular people coming in on the 15 or 30 minute mark, but 25% of your attractions are closed, or some percentage of your attractions are closed throughout that time. So you're always cleaning a section of it and disinfecting and sanitizing. So would be curious to hear from some of the operators, kind of how they're thinking about the procedures that they're going to do around cleaning. Feel free to unmute yourself if you got some thoughts on that.
Scott, we have a few comments in the comment section if you want to address those. Okay.
Yeah.
We have Daniel Wexler. Did any of the parks that reopened have to submit a detailed written plan to the governing municipality?
I personally am not aware of any of the parks that we know of, or that we connect with and support, where they've had to. Is anybody on the call aware or have had to submit anything to your local governing about your plans and procedures for cleaning?
Our local water park in Meridian, Idaho submitted one to their mayor and got approved to open in phase 3, even though water parks are not allowed to open in Idaho till phase 4. They submitted a bunch of stuff to the CDC and the mayor's office, and were allowed to open, or are allowed to open on May 30th.
Yeah.
Brian Severance in the comments said you should not wait. Go ahead and make one now.
Brian, go ahead and unmute yourself. I was going to call on you in a little bit anyway, so now's a good time. Hang on, you're still muted there.
Here, I'll unmute you, Brian.
There you go, Brian. You're on.
Should be. Well,
there we go. I had to click yes, apparently.
There we go.
I have to approve. You should not wait to make one. We've actually had a lot of customers, clients that have been pretty successful opening earlier than the current standards are. We've got to remember that a lot of these standards are just blanket standards, right? They just say anything entertainment, you can't open. But if we focus, not necessarily on all the changes, but let's focus on some of the positive things that, Fun Spot already builds into their parks. Right? We already have kind of that distancing already, because we're only supposed to have one person per map, right? So we focus on that inside the whatever sheet or whatever one page you're putting together for that governing body. Don't wait. I'd say do it right now and submit it right now. Don't even wait. Just jump right into it on there, but focus on the things that we already inherently, as a business, kind of require that physical distancing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. What else are you hearing out there? I mean, Brian is a friend in the industry for a number of years. We met back investigating virtual reality in the family entertainment space, and he's a consultant and has a lot of experience and knowledge in the industry. So glad to see you on with us. Would be happy to hear from you a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've actually seen there's up and downs in this one. So when we get to a specific question, I'd be more than happy to ask.
Fair enough. So Greg asked, if we're looking at opening in June, are parks looking at closing midday? Again, would love to hear from you what you're thinking about what your cleaning schedule is going to look like in the chat space. And Robin's asking about hand sanitizer stations. Every park that Matt and I went into, the 6 different ones, still closed, not yet open, had additional hand sanitizing stations at every attraction. I just pulled up a prototype. So yesterday, I pulled up a prototype of some hand sanitizer wipe. I mean, you can get a 5-gallon bucket of hand sanitizer wipes now. So, but where do you put that so it's high enough so the kids aren't just going like this? So someone asked us if we could put together with our steel fabrication a holder for those kind of buckets, as well as the Sam or Costco really large hand sanitizer pumps, so they're slightly high enough for adults to put them down for kids. So we're looking at that. If that's something that you would need, that's something we can likely put together for you. What else do we have? Hand sanitizers. Yeah. So, what else? What other questions? What's on your mind as you think about reopening? This is a forum for you. We've got some great people on the call, vendor partners, consultants, other park operators. So, Chad, did you have something you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah. So, I know you hear everyone say, people are saying that they have to make a plan and ask for permission. Most of the stuff I'm seeing is recommendations. And I haven't, again, we're from Idaho. I haven't seen one person who has opened up early or pushed the gray areas, even been talked to or warned. Basically, what I'm more worried about is pushing the gray areas is the community side of it, the social media side of it. So has anyone on this call seen anyone actually get a ticket or be shut down because they have opened up too early? Or is it more the social media side that people are worried about?
I'll jump in because we saw it here in Colorado. You may have seen it on the national news with a diner here in Colorado that opened up without a plan, without following any of the guidelines. Actually, just before this call, I read an article that they've actually been closed down until further notice. So I think it is important to have a plan and to make sure you're taking the steps to assure people when they come in, because if they feel confident that it's not going to turn into a social media story or a news story about something that's out of control. So to a certain degree, you want to control the situation as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Chad, what's your park?
Jump Time, Idaho.
Okay, awesome. What town in Idaho?
We got Meridian, Twin Falls, and one in Bozeman, Montana.
Beautiful country. So Rohit, what about climbing walls? How do you handle that? And maybe Bill, this could be a good question for you, having probably been on a lot of the Climbing Wall Association calls, I'm sure. How are people thinking about how they operate a climbing wall in a physical distant environment with cleaning in between?
Yeah, and what we've seen is not so much cleaning of the wall itself, but again, making sure that the hand sanitizing and hand washing is done. And we're hearing a lot in the climbing space about limiting capacity and starting slow. A lot of the gyms out there are talking about limiting the capacity to about 30% of their normal capacity, and making sure that there is the space involved. a difference between kind of this industry and the climbing industry is started and based around a climber and a belayer. So we're in our industry where autobelays are being used, you're automatically given that space, which is definitely a benefit. But it gets really complicated when you start talking about cleaning the wall itself. So a lot of the focus has been on before the person actually gets on the wall, before they start climbing, and making sure they're following all the protocols. Another interesting thing, it doesn't necessarily apply here, but there's a lot of discussion about liquid chalk, which, again, it can kind of affect the look of the climbing route itself, but liquid chalk is actually alcohol based, and there's research that's going on to see if it provides the same benefit of using an alcohol based hand sanitizer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
Scott, Lisa Cannon has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Lisa. You can unmute yourself, or Alan might need to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi,
What's your question?
hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Hi, and my husband Rob's going to talk.
Hi, we own a couple trampoline parks up in Connecticut, and one of the things that, we appreciate everything, the alcohol, whether you open or close for an hour and how you do all that. And we're going through every iteration, and we appreciate it. The one elephant in the room that I've heard very little talked about is, what are people doing with foam pits? Now, I know it's specific to a trampoline park, and I understand that, but there are tumbling parks and other parks that have it. Does anybody have any input on what they're doing with foam pits?
I'll take a first stab, and then would love to hear back what other people. As a manufacturer, Rob, we get asked that quite a bit. We are seeing an increased request for replacing all foam in a park to airbags. So that is certainly one option. The second is we've had requests for something like an airbag cover to put over the foam. And we've spoken to both of the manufacturers that we do business with, and neither of them are comfortable at this point, supplying an airbag cover over foam. According to ASTM, it changes the dynamic of entering the foam pit and hasn't been tested yet. So we, along with the airbag manufacturers, are looking at that as a solution, but it's not anything that's immediate. The third thing is I've been speaking with a couple of different cleaning services. As we talk about kind of frequency of cleaning, there are a couple of fogging services that different parks have used in the past on a regular basis, where they'll come in for 4 or 5 hours, on a Friday night after closing and fog with a disinfectant that would kill all viruses all the way around. So that helps on a kind of a global one-time sale, but what do you do with your foam cubes, throughout the day? I am talking with one manufacturer of a product, a chemical product, that's non-toxic, that would kill any virus or microbes that you would put into something like a pump sprayer and close down your foam pit for 10 minutes every hour or something and spray. Now, that's not going to get all 6 sides, 100% of your cubes, but it's going to, it's going to hit 80%, 70% of what's going on the foam cubes. And it's also a visible reminder that you are doing something with foam. So those are kind of my really two. One is, you can definitely replace them with an airbag cover or with an airbag. Two, we can look at some sort of spray disinfectant over the foam cubes.
Looks like Brian Severance has quite a bit to say about the steamer aspect of this.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I don't know about quite a bit to say. I mean, we have used steamers in the past, and a lot of the trampoline parks that we work with use steamers on the mats and pads. You can find them at almost any, industrial vacuum cleaner store or something like that. They're perfectly wide enough to fit over most of the pads and mats that we have, and they clean very well, and they do a great job at disinfecting without having to use a lot of chemicals. As you guys have spoken about before, a lot of the chemicals that we actually use to clean our trampolines and other attractions, in order for them to actually disinfect, you got to let them sit for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So they got to stay wet for a certain amount of time, and that's just not something that's super feasible for us. One, it won't stay wet; it's going to dry out the air conditioner. You'd have to put so much liquid on there, all those things. That's why we found that steam works out really well. We have had people talk about the foam pits, and I think what Scott's saying, I'm going to throw in my piece here, but Scott's right. When you spray them, you're not going to hit everything, right? But it's more of the appearance. This sounds bad. Don't crucify me yet, but it is. When it comes to the sanitization thing, it's going through airport security. It's making it appear to everyone that we are doing the best and we are doing the best that we can to keep the place clean. So a very visible spraying of your foam pit works wonders, as long as it's very visible during the day. I actually don't like to shut down during the cleaning, because then you lose that visibility of the cleaning actually happening. I love the idea that Scott mentioned earlier about the attractions just going down one at a time throughout the park and cleaning that way. It makes sure everybody can see it. Take a bunch of videos of it happening. Show your customers and your employees on Facebook what's going on, how much we care for you. This is why we're doing all of this. And I think it will go pretty well. But yeah, the steamers are great. Look them up. Love them. Fantastic.
Yeah, and we recommend a physical, using Odoban or other chemicals that are disinfectants with a wipe. As we talked about last week, you can't disinfect a dirty surface, so you've got to kind of clean it and then go back and hit it again so that it is sanitized and disinfected. So what may have been a one kind of wipe in the past at night, in the evening after you close, is likely to be a wipe, and then you go back and you do a second application of your same chemical, so that you are actually killing anything that is on there.
So
we'll put a link to some of the products as well. Go ahead, Al.
Two quick points that were made in the comments, one about steam and one about disinfectants. Just thought we could answer those. Diego raised the question about the steamers. We were advised by the manufacturers not to use steam, as the heat can damage some protective coatings. And pretty much the same is being said by Dylan Alwyn. Be careful with chemicals on foam, as they can break down and reduce fire retardants that are in the cubes. Can we maybe address those two?
Yeah, I did address that with the manufacturer of the chemical that I was speaking of about spraying. It's I said, hey, that's a big consideration for us, in our soft products. Obviously the steel's, not really an issue, but our vinyl and our trampoline material are both soft products, textiles, and there are chemicals that can break down, and so you do have to be careful. Bill, when he talks about 70% isopropyl alcohol on that webbing, it's because anything more than that starts to break down that webbing, and you don't want to have degradation in your material when that's what's protecting you from falling from 20 feet. So yes, you do need to really be aware of what it is that you're using. Do your research. There's going to be all kinds of people contacting you. I see it in my email box every day, services and companies and products. And you really have to ask good questions, such as, will it affect the fire retardancy of my foam and things like that. So as a manufacturer, our commitment is to do a lot of that research and to put those products that we have vetted out there on our Townhall website, so that you have access to those, including the cleaning services, kind of the fogging services that we're aware of. Did I catch everybody up so far, you think? No?
Yeah. Patrick Boer, sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Is anybody using electrolytes water as a disinfectant? Is it for real? Apparently, it's been approved by the CDC for killing viruses. I'm currently researching this for disinfecting airbags, airbag and mats. Electrolyzed water is AKA hypochlorous acid.
Thanks, Patrick. I don't know if that's you or Elliot, but I'm not aware of that particular product. I'd be happy to hear if anybody else has heard of this type of product.
And Ashish,
we'll take a note to take a look at this as well.
Yeah. Ashish Gupta was asking, will most of the facilities, we kind of addressed this earlier on, but reopen as walk-in time, or some are looking at advanced bookings and sell time slots online so the crowd capacity is manageable and also breaks between time slots allow for complete entire facility and all equipment. My question is specific to indoor FECs.
Best practices that we're hearing is that all tickets should be sold online, that there's really little to no walk-in, at least in these first couple of phases. So that, that's why, going back to the early part of this talk and 2 weeks ago when we talked about marketing, it's really important to stay connected to your customer in social media. Because the last thing you want is to have somebody, walk in with 3 kids who are been climbing the walls, and you've communicated very poorly that all your tickets have to be bought online beforehand. So, whatever it is that you decide and however you decide, and I would say that is a best practice for the first phase of opening, is that, your tickets are purchased online. That way they can tie it to a waiver, and, you don't have to exchange the credit card or the cash and all that. I understand that's some inconvenience for some people, but that would be what I've heard of as a best practice for people.
So there's a little conversation going on between Chad, Diego, and a couple others about, is anyone going to check clients' temperature as they enter the park or before they enter the park? And then Diego's saying that they're already planning on doing that. So I guess we should see if anybody else is planning on doing that and maybe some best practices for that.
Sarah's saying that I'll be checking guest temperatures. In the previous call with Attraction Pros, one of the questions that they asked, what is it that you would want to see from from the venue that you go to, be it a zoo, a museum, or a trampoline adventure park, or climbing gym? And one of the things that was high on the list was that the respondents really wanted to have the owners and operators show that they are taking their employees and staff's temperatures prior to coming to work. That was very high on their list of things that they wanted to see happen. But several steps below that was, they didn't feel like they needed to have their temperature taken. So there's some discrepancy around, kind of what that is and how you do it, and what may or may not be required from a state and local government standpoint. I think that's going to be you talking with your customers. I have seen a number of parks, and if you haven't done this yet, again, connect with them through social media on a survey. Do a quick free Survey Monkey and ask them questions and get their feedback, and see what your customers. I think, Biloxi, Mississippi customers are likely going to be different from downtown Chicago customers, right? So that's where it becomes very challenging to give a one-size-fits-all answer to some of these. I think it's good for us to ask these questions, and we will be saving this whole chat so that we can go back and make sure we address on our town hall site anything that we miss or any additional information or research that we find. So looks like we have some people saying, yeah, they are going to be checking temperature.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular subject. And then Patrick also said that he would follow up with Scott about the electrolyzed water. So whatever we find, we will put up on townhall.funspot.com.
There's a question about staff guidelines, and we did have a couple of these discussions, Matt and I, when we were out and about last week, and 2 different people shared some ways that they're doing their staffing, and one is that they would have like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday staff and a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday staff, and then maybe some sort of mix on the 7th day, so that everybody had a day to find out if something happened with them. So that's kind of one practice that I've heard of, people just segregating their teams together. What else have people thought about as far as how they might schedule their staff any differently going forward?
We're going to start off with less hours.
Okay.
Instead of being open 7 days a week, we'll take Monday and Tuesday off and evaluate the rest of the week. especially sometimes during the evenings. The evenings are a little slower, so we might close at 7 instead of 9.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
reduced hours until proven differently.
Yeah, similar to what the grocery stores did day one. They shrunk their hours pretty significantly so they could do extensive cleaning at night. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, I mean, taking care of our staff, having them, whether they wear a mask, if I was an operator, I think I would use a face shield versus a mask so you can actually see the team's face. It might seem a little more awkward, but I find it challenging to deal with the having to talk with someone with a mask, and if they've got to blow a whistle, how are they going to do that with a mask on? So just some things to consider. So when you think about the clear plastic versus a mask, something I think sourcing those, I've seen lots of people on LinkedIn having those available. If you're having trouble sourcing anything for your FEC, feel free to contact me, and I can network you with people that we're aware of. Whether we ask someone's talking about having do the kids wear masks or not wear masks, and again, I think that's gonna depend again whether you're in, I'll just keep using Biloxi, Mississippi, just because it's a smaller rural town versus downtown Chicago. I mean, there's just a big difference in what those customers are going to expect from everybody else in the room, at least in these initial stages.
Yeah, there was one comment about even having children wear masks versus just the adults or whatever, because it's nearly impossible to ask a 6 to an 8-year-old to keep a mask on. Is pretty much the consensus.
Breathing, that may
Yeah.
be
And Nate brought up, is it not safe to exercise with a face mask? So I think that's a valid point as well. And these are all things that we're having to bring to the table and figure out together. So
Nate Flock is on our team at Fun Spot. He's our safety and risk management trainer. So he's our guy who goes out when parks open, and we install them and trains the staff on how to be a court monitor safely and maintain that equipment. So his thoughts are important. I do want to address the waiver, at least bring it up. A couple people have asked, are people putting a COVID-19 statement within their waiver? And I have not heard a best practice on whether or what to put into that, and would be interested if there is someone who's already maybe talked with an attorney or thought about some language that they're going to put into their waiver. Maybe Brian, I don't know if you've heard anything around a change to the waiver. You're still muted, Brian.
There we go. Oh, there we are. Yeah, so we've actually talked to a couple of attorneys through that. The biggest concern that a lot of the attorneys have on that one is that it's kind of opening up a really dangerous door. If we are starting to assume that we might be able to take responsibility for a virus that is something that's uncontrollable, it can be difficult. But a lot of your waivers already have something in there just about that there is personal risk involved by coming into the park. And social interaction or physical interaction is a personal risk that we all take. If you don't have a waiver yet, I would go ahead and talk to an attorney about putting some vague information in there, maybe about acts of God, or just something that does not specifically say COVID-19 or flu or any type of viral infection, because you'll be held to that standard. And once you're held to a sanitation standard, that's a very difficult standard to get out of. And that's going to be for every single park that's out there that does this. If you already have a waiver, I think if we open up and require people to sign a brand new waiver, we may be causing ourselves a little more heartache than is needed right now. So yes, when you're going to go to a change of a waiver, put something in, but don't specifically put it in as COVID-19. But if you already have a waiver, I don't think that it's currently required, and the attorneys that we have in a few states currently do not think that it's required in order to protect yourself from it.
Yeah, I know. I spent a little over 6 years as an operator before I got in on the supplier side, and was accused on more than one occasion of someone getting sick in my facility. And I was like, well, how do you know? And on one very specific occasion, it turned out that it was the food that they ate at the party after they came to our facility that turned out to be what made them sick. So it's very, very difficult to begin to take responsibility for that. The other side of kind of a not necessarily waiver, but a policy is around your refund policy should you have to close due to pandemic. I mean, I think most people I've heard of did the right thing and refunded all those birthday party deposits, which I know was quite sacrificial as owner operators. But there may be something that you would want to put in your updating your refund policy, just so at least it's there. Not that you're going to use it, but sometimes having it written is good. And Wendy asking about updating the employee handbook with procedures and compliances. Something we haven't talked about, and I think I'm going to save it for another town hall, but it's the whole idea of employee engagement. I mean, we operate in an industry that's built on 15 to 21-year-olds managing these procedures and processes and engaging our guests, and so I think it's going to behoove us as owner operators to really learn what it means to engage a 15 to 21-year-old, why it's important to clean, why even more so now than it ever was that your bathrooms are just spotless. I mean, the last thing any of us wants is a Yelper to walk in who's got a chip on their shoulder for some reason because they think you opened too early and snap a bad picture of your bathroom. I mean, and having been an operator, I know those guys exist. And so, really, how do we engage our staff? So I've been working on getting some people in that field that can really give us some best practices on engaging that age group and working with them so that they really are engaged and actively involved in this process. Wendy has a good question about what are we thinking if all of a sudden we do get a court monitor who is diagnosed? What and how do you communicate that? I think those are questions that we'll be able to look to some other retail that open up before us to see how they handle it. I mean, I can say one good thing about maybe being in our industry and in reopening is that we're going to have the restaurants and the barbers and the salons and the tattoo parlors that open before us that will get to hit a lot of these questions before we do. So we'll get to benefit from their experience.
Hey, Scott. So Miranda was asking about the UV light as a disinfecting option.
I have seen that, both kind of a handheld. I've seen it used in karting FECs for helmets, where they'll put the helmet inside of these UV containers. I've seen robot-looking ones that roll around on your floor and just shine UV light all over. I am absolutely not capable of answering the question as to whether that's something currently that we would recommend. Again, it would be something I would certainly do your research on.
Scott, from kind of a manufacturer that deals in textiles, UV is bad for textiles. It will degrade the strength of the textile very quickly. So again, it's going back to the manufacturer of the different components within a facility and checking what's good and what's bad. Because when you look at things used in climbing or the adventure industry, harnesses, webbing, rope, any of those things, UV is going to degrade that material relatively quickly. So it's not safe to use. And we actually highly recommend against it. So it is definitely very important to check with the manufacturer.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah. Brian, do you have something?
If I can on that, since I am kind of a laser tag freak, when it comes to UV lights, there's just this huge spectrum of UV lights, and I think what the question might have kind of been is just those basic lights maybe that are in our parks to to emphasize glow or fluorescent lights. That the black lights that we utilize even in our parks have so many different wavelengths of black light, right? Or of those UV lights. The ones that they're talking specifically for disinfectants, the ones Scott and Bill kind of talked about, those are very high powered and very specific wavelength, and they are horrible for almost everything. That's why they kill viruses and other things. But they're not used in mass. You just can't use them in a large environment, or like your laser tag or your club nights that you have. Those regular black lights or those UV lights aren't going to really disinfect anything. Though I do recommend them because they look awesome. Other than that, no, the regular UV lights are not good.
Thank you, Scott. Wendy brought up a really good question, I thought. What policy are other park owners considering if an employee who has worked in the past few days is diagnosed with COVID-19 and has worked within the past 48 hours?
Yeah, I think that's going to be happy to hear from what other people are saying when it comes to that, either not being on the operations side specifically. So I think we'll get a lot of heads up from restaurants and other retail that open up before us. Kevin's asking about wristbands, how do you avoid physical contact? Again, I think that goes into the physical distancing, how you have your people, how you manage your flow. If you're managing your flow where you're only doing a group of 75 on the 90 minutes and then closing down for half hour, in my opinion, you don't necessarily need a wristband because they pay and they're the only ones that are there. You're not rotating them in every 15 minutes. The whole group's coming in as a group and they're leaving as a group, just like a movie theater. So that may be one benefit, at least in the early stages of attempting to manage that way. Be open to other options and thoughts. Shelley was asking about harnesses and cleaning. Again, that 70% isopropyl alcohol on textiles is something that's good and would kill any of those things that need to be killed. I did talk to a park owner, a climbing park owner who contacted a local distillery to get that 70% IPA or isopropyl alcohol, not IPA, since it's a distillery, for them, and they were going to be able to produce that for them. So if you're finding shortages on some of these things, there are some very interesting pivots that people have done to produce some of these things. Well, we're at 10 minutes to the hour, and I think that we've spent a good amount of time. My commitment to you and our team here at FunSpot is that we'll take all this whole chat and we'll pull it together. We'll make sure that we have some text answers to the questions so that you can go back and look, and we'll have links to any of them that have resources, including the fogging services that we've connected with that you might want to reach out to for some quotes and some chemical products. So with that, I really would like to just say thank you. Next week, we're going to look at talking about some of our vendor partners and some of the different products and services that you have. We'll also have some time just to see what's happened in the last 7 days, because it changes by the moment if you're following any of the news that's out there. So thanks, Bill. Thanks, Brian, Chad, those who engaged in speaking up and being a resource for us. If it's okay, I'll put your links on there too as well, Brian and Bill. So if people have additional questions for things that you talked about, we can get in touch with you guys. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, great, thanks. And so again, thanks. Hope you guys have a great afternoon, and we'll be back here next Tuesday at 2:00. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.